On the evening of October 22, 1989, the small town of St. Joseph, Minnesota, settled into what seemed like any other quiet autumn night. Leaves had begun to fall, the air was crisp, and families across the community were winding down their weekends. For 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling, the night was simple and innocent. He, his younger brother Trevor, and a close family friend had gone on a short bike ride to a nearby convenience store to rent a movie. It was an ordinary activity, one that countless children in small towns across America had done without fear for generations. No one could have imagined that this ordinary moment would become the beginning of one of the most haunting and influential criminal cases in U.S. history. The boys left the store and began biking home along a rural road just outside town. The road was dimly lit, bordered by open fields and patches of trees, with very little traffic at that hour. As they rode, talking and laughing, a man suddenly emerged from the darkness ahead of them. He was wearing a mask and holding a gun. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted from carefree to terrifying. The man stepped into their path and ordered them off their bikes. His voice was calm but commanding, and the presence of the gun made it clear that this was not a situation they could escape from. The masked man instructed all three boys to lie face down in a ditch beside the road. Shaking with fear, they obeyed. While they lay there, unable to see what was happening but acutely aware of every sound and word, the man asked them their ages. Each boy answered. After hearing their responses, the man made a decision that would forever change their lives. He told Jacob to stand up and come with him. Then he turned to the other two boys and gave them a chilling command. Run as fast as you can, don't look back, and don't tell anyone what you saw. Terrified and confused, Trevor and the other boy ran toward home, hearts pounding, desperately hoping that Jacob would somehow follow them. He never did. Jacob disappeared into the darkness with the masked man, and he was never seen alive again. When the two boys reached home and told their parents what had happened, panic spread immediately. Law enforcement was contacted within minutes, and soon squad cars were racing through the area. The realization that a child had been abducted at gunpoint sent shockwaves through St. Joseph and neighboring communities. What followed was one of the largest and most intense search efforts Minnesota had ever seen. Local police officers, county sheriff's deputies, state troopers, and hundreds of volunteers combed the countryside throughout the night. They searched fields, ditches, farm buildings, and wooded areas, calling Jacob's name and hoping for a miracle. The search quickly expanded. The FBI joined the investigation, bringing additional resources and expertise. The National Guard was activated to assist in the effort. Helicopters flew overhead, scanning the landscape, while search dogs tracked scents through fields and along roads. For days, the community lived in a state of collective fear and hope. Parents kept their children close, neighbors watched out for one another, and churches filled with people praying for Jacob's safe return. Posters with Jacob's face appeared everywhere, and his name became known far beyond Minnesota. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Jacob, the investigation intensified. Thousands of tips poured in from across the country. Law enforcement followed up on reports of suspicious vehicles, unfamiliar faces, and possible sightings. Known sex offenders were questioned, alibis were checked, and countless hours were spent interviewing potential witnesses. Despite the massive effort, the case refused to break. There was no ransom demand, no credible sightings, and no physical evidence that clearly pointed to a suspect. The lack of answers was devastating for Jacob's family and deeply unsettling for the community. Over time, criticism began to surface regarding the handling of the investigation. Reports later suggested that important evidence may have been overlooked or mishandled in the early stages. Some leads were not fully pursued, and certain tips that seemed promising in hindsight were not given the attention they deserved. These issues would become a source of frustration and regret as the years went on. Like many cases involving missing children, The first hours and days were critical, and any missteps during that period could have long-lasting consequences. Jacob's disappearance fundamentally changed St. Joseph. Before October 1989, it was a place where children played freely, rode their bikes after dark, and parents trusted their community. After Jacob vanished, that sense of safety was shattered. Parents no longer allowed their children to roam unsupervised. Curfews became stricter, doors were locked more often, and conversations about stranger danger became a daily reality. Schools implemented new safety measures, and the idea that something so horrific could happen in their town left a permanent mark on the community's collective psyche. For the Wetterling family, the pain was unimaginable. Jacob's parents, Patty and Jerry Wetterling, and his siblings lived in a constant state of uncertainty. Every day brought the same unanswered question. Where was Jacob? Was he alive? Was he suffering? Or was he already gone? The lack of closure made it impossible to grieve fully. Yet despite their heartbreak, the Wetterlings refused to let Jacob's disappearance define him only as a victim. Instead, they chose to turn their pain into purpose. Patty Wetterling emerged as a powerful advocate for children's safety. She spoke publicly about her family's experience, sharing Jacob's story in hopes of preventing similar tragedies. She worked with lawmakers, educators, and law enforcement to promote awareness, prevention, and better resources for protecting children. Along with her family, she founded the Jacob Wetterling Foundation, an organization dedicated to educating children and adults about personal safety, abduction prevention, and exploitation. Through this work, Jacob's name became associated not only with tragedy, but with meaningful change. As the years passed, Jacob Wetterling's case became one of the most well-known cold cases in America. It was revisited periodically as new tips surfaced or as advances in technology offered renewed hope. DNA analysis improved, databases expanded, and investigators continued to re-examine evidence. Each new development sparked media attention and renewed public interest, but time and again, the case stalled. For nearly 27 years, the question of what happened to Jacob remained unanswered. The uncertainty took a heavy toll on the Wetterling family. Holidays, birthdays, and milestones passed without Jacob. Every knock on the door, every phone call, carried the possibility of news. The family lived between hope and despair, never knowing whether the next day would finally bring answers. Despite this, they continued their advocacy work, determined to ensure that Jacob's legacy would be one of protection and awareness rather than silence. 2016, nearly 3 decades after Jacob's abduction, the case took a dramatic turn. Danny Heinrich, a longtime person of interest in the investigation, was arrested on unrelated charges involving child pornography. Heinrich had been questioned multiple times over the years, but there had never been enough evidence to charge him in Jacob's case. This time, however, circumstances were different. As investigators revisited old evidence and questioned Heinrich again, the pressure mounted. Eventually, Heinrich confessed to abducting and murdering Jacob Wetterling. His confession confirmed what many had feared but could never prove. Heinrich led authorities to a remote pasture near Painesville, Minnesota, where Jacob's remains were discovered. The recovery of Jacob's remains marked the end of one of the longest and most painful chapters in Minnesota's history. For the first time in 27 years, there were definitive answers. The confirmation of Jacob's death was devastating, but it also brought a sense of closure that had long been denied. For the Wetterling family, knowing what happened allowed them to grieve fully. While the truth was painful, it ended decades of uncertainty and speculation. For the community, it was a moment of collective mourning and reflection. The case also prompted renewed scrutiny of how missing child investigations are handled, emphasizing the importance of accountability, thoroughness, and persistence. Jacob Wetterling's story did not end with the resolution of his case. His legacy continues to shape conversations about child safety, law enforcement practices, and community responsibility. The Jacob Wetterling Foundation remains active, educating families and empowering children with knowledge and tools to protect themselves. Jacob's name is remembered not only as a victim of a horrific crime, but as a symbol of resilience, advocacy, and change. Today, looking back on that October night in 1989, it is impossible not to reflect on how quickly ordinary moments can turn tragic. Jacob's disappearance serves as a reminder that vigilance, awareness, and compassion are essential in protecting the most vulnerable among us. While nothing can undo the loss suffered by the Wetterling family, Jacob's life and the impact of his story continue to make a difference, ensuring that he is never forgotten and that his legacy lives on in the lives he continues to protect.